Welcome to the Razors Inc. podcast with your host, Jonathan Farini. It's a universal wish. What if you could be somebody else? Not one specific person, mind you, but what if you could begin life anew? Be transformed into another person, different looks, different place, different occupation, but you would also lose everything from the life you know today. Would you do it? Pour yourself a drink, pull up a chair, and hear Jonathan's take on movies, television, and today, the scenario I just described, as terrifying as any horror movie you've ever seen. Here's your host, Jonathan Farini.
Seconds, 1966 Paramount release. It's inside the National Film Registry, Library of Congress. I do reveal plot twists inside this podcast. John Frankenheimer is the director, who previously completed Birdman of Alcatraz in 1962, The Manchurian Candidate in 1962, and 7 Days in May in 1964. Frankenheimer's niche was, I call it telling stories of the mind. The early 60s fueled wonderful film, and I was around to see it as a kid, mind you. I think it was a rebirth, pun intended, of thoughtful film stemming from the malaise of the 50s, which was about garnering material possessions and forgetting the traumas of World War II and Korea. The screenplay was written by Louis John Carlino, a writer and director, whose works include The Great Santini, The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea, and The Mechanic, to name a few.
Bold. Bizarre. Terrifying. Rock Hudson, in an astonishing change of pace, stars in Seconds. Rock Hudson, as a man who buys for himself a totally new life, a chance to begin again. Every man's dream since time began.
Seconds is adapted from a 1963 novel by David Eli, who is credited on Serling's, that's Rod Serling's, 1969 Night Gallery series. He's the author of several books and may be 96 years old. I could not find an obit. Kirk Douglas was producing the story and intended to play Tony, but scheduling wouldn't permit it. So Frankenheimer offered the role to Olivier. Yes, Sir Laurence Olivier. But Paramount objected because they thought Olivier wasn't a big enough star. Hudson wanted to expand his range beyond rom-coms. I can't see Olivier in this role any more than I could see Hudson playing a Nazi war criminal dentist in Marathon Man.
Is it safe?
You talking to me?
Is it safe?
It's what safe?
Is it safe?
The premise of the movie is the following value proposition. Would you, for a fee, permit a company to arrange your death, a legitimate death replete with death certificate, and provide you a new identity? Not only a new identity, including IDs, college diplomas, everything you need to assume this new person that you've become, but also a new body, which involves an extensive surgery. Your consciousness, your mindset is the same, but you're in a new and improved body, whatever that might be for you, man or woman. But you're now somebody else, and you can't go back again because everybody from your former life understands that you're dead. And we're introduced to this character. He's a banker, pushing retirement age. His name is Arthur Hamilton, played by John Randolph. And he decides to go ahead and have this company arrange this change of identity. And this middle-aged, short, gray-haired banker, Arthur Hamilton, becomes this 6'2", 6'3", handsome Tony Wilson, played by Rock Hudson, who is an artist, a free spirit, living in Malibu, California. So the question that the movie Seconds poses to you is, would you do it? And more importantly, can you walk away from your former life? And if you find your new life unsatisfactory, what are you going to do about it? What are the ramifications? In my own personal assessment, you'll find out I don't need a company. I didn't need a company. My life provided me the opportunity to change my life and take it in the direction I wanted to. Let's begin the analysis. I recall watching the film throughout my youth. I was 8 years old when it was released and saw it many times over in the 60s and 70s and periodically thereafter, but it fell off my radar screen. I understand it went out of print in 2002, but the Criterion Collection released a restored version on DVD and Blu-ray in 2013. It's available to rent online.
So we tightened them with ligatures.
Yep.
Then we worked on the mandible to square up the bone.
Uh-huh. Well, I never. Holy mackerel, I don't know how you boys do it. Doc, it's a masterpiece. Good work. Easy does it. You'll be all right, son.
Your scars and hematomas will disappear in a couple of weeks. After several months of physical conditioning, the process will be complete.
I likely haven't seen this film in over 20 years, which I prefer because I can watch it from the perspective of maturity. Frankly, watching it from the perspective of the antagonist, Arthur Hamilton's age prior to becoming reborn. In returning to the film to prepare this podcast, I'm reminded of the famous episode 30, season 1 of The Twilight Zone, titled A Stop at Willoughby, which aired in 1960, a full 6 years before Seconds.
Some people aren't built for competition, Janie. Or big pretentious houses they can't afford. Or rich communities they don't feel comfortable in. Or country clubs they wear around their neck like a badge of status.
And you would prefer?
I would prefer, though never asked before, a job, any job at all where I could be myself. Where I wouldn't have to climb on a stage and go through a masquerade every morning at 9 o'clock. And mouth all the dialogue and play the executive and make believe I'm the bright young man who's on his way up, because I'm not that person, Janie. You've tried to make me that person, but that isn't me. That isn't me at all.
My point is, the subject of you can't go home again and urban-suburban commuting burnout aren't new themes. 2 years after Seconds, in 1968, the movie Charlie was released, where a low IQ man undergoes surgery and lives life as a genius, but realizes, like Tony in Seconds, the future isn't rosy. Charlie, however, returns to the low IQ, childlike character when his surgery fails, and our last look at Charlie is playing on a teeter-totter with a big smile on his face. In my opinion, Charlie returned home again. See my podcast, Rediscovering the Movie Charlie. Our last view of Tony is struggling while strapped to a gurney, realizing he will be euthanized.
Requisition from day room stock May 6th. Released for cadaver use last night. CPS number 722. Disposition, death by automobile accident caused by cerebral hemorrhage.
What's the solution strength?
5% of 10 cc's.
Timer. 5 minutes.
You were my best work, Mr. Wilson. I'm sorry it all has to end like this.
Rock Hudson's finest work in this film didn't require dialogue. When the character of Tony and the man who was Rock Hudson was strapped tightly to that gurney and muzzled, as he thrashed about with that magnificent manly physicality, which was one of the trademarks of his craft. Rock Hudson was tapping into a personal reservoir of emotions. Only he understood. But the fight to survive, the frustration that it was all about to end, and more we'll never know, was palpable. It spoke volumes Shakespeare couldn't write. When the sedative took effect and John and James were in tight with the camera on the actor's face, he shared with us the resignation that the pain was over and he was at peace, and the emotions gently swept across the man and actor's face like a shadow from the setting sun. For me, Seconds was a ticket to live within Rock Hudson, the actor and the man. The metaphors surrounding this challenge run throughout this film and are salient to me. This role may have been cathartic for Rock Hudson. Inside Seconds, look for extreme close-ups and the unmistakable beauty of James Wong Howe, black and white photography, accompanied by a haunting Jerry Goldsmith score. Howe was nominated for an Oscar but didn't win. Arthur's dreadful train rides to and from the city from Long Island were my dreadful commutes to and from Los Angeles on the crowded freeways. I could relate to him. The meeting at the meatpacking plant with hanging slabs of beef was a beautiful metaphor for what was about to happen to Arthur. The blackmail of Arthur after the drugging and his sexual molestation of the woman was heavy-handed and likely not necessary. I found it clumsy and would have believed Arthur would likely have relented to signing up for the procedure with some more convincing. The scene with Arthur, who is offered a chicken dinner, is delightful.
The chicken looks delicious.
No, thank you.
That's as I was saying. Look, you sure you don't want this chicken?
Absolutely sure.
Oh, pity. The next step is the carefully planned obliteration of identifiable portions of the cadaver before it is found. Would you mind if...
Please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Wilson. The trick lies in obliterating just so much and no more, so that an identification still can be made based on, as I say, general dimensions, plus a credible sequence of events, witnesses, etc.
And he can't keep his hands off the meal. It may have been ad-libbed. It's just too clever to make it onto the page. The surgery scenes were so real, and the surgeon played by Richard Anderson was spot on. An actual rhinoplasty was filmed by Frankenheimer and inserted into Seconds. Tip of the hat to the creator of the opening credits, Saul Bass. It sets the tone of the movie. See it and you'll understand. Another tip of the hat to the Manchurian Candidate psychoanalyst who shows up again in Seconds, going by the character name of Davilo.
These diplomas from reputable universities, they can't be forged.
Mr. Wilson, I assure you, every item is bona fide and valid. You see, you don't have to prove anything anymore. You are accepted. You will be in your own new dimension. You're a bachelor, birth certificate, the only son of deceased parents and so forth. In short, you are alone in the world, absolved of all responsibility except to your own interest.
It's an actor also known as Kenneth Dickerson, who's known for playing Wofat in Hawaii Five-0. This actor just nails the encyclopedic knowledge of psychoanalysis in both films. What did you learn about yourself, Jonathan? It didn't take a surgery for me to live a life similar to Tony. It was my own midlife crisis at age 40 and determination to find the key and create freedom bind me a life of an artist living at the beach. I've known my share of Noras and continue to look for more. Salome Jens was beautiful and played the character admirably. Like Tony, I feel socially withdrawn as he did in Santa Barbara, and I strive to loosen up. Maybe I'll find that wine vat and crush some grapes too. My John wasn't a butler, but an analyst who provided me suggestions for introspection. The actor, Wesley Addy, playing John, shows up in many 60s films in quiet, contemplative roles, which he plays to the hilt. Be careful what you wish for. It may be more of the same. Yes, but you have to keep returning to the key and turning it over and over. Don't lose that key, because it's you who is responsible for your rebirth.
What kind of a man was he? There's grace in the line and color, but it doesn't emerge pure. It pushes at the edge of something still tentative, unresolved, as if somewhere in the man there is still a key unturned.
That's quite an analysis.
Not really. When you come to think of it, it sort of fits everybody. Doesn't it?
It's very nice here.
The good things always happen with the rain.
She's correct. Embrace each storm and use it to learn and move forward. You can't go home again. I often contemplate going home, but it won't be the same as you remember, so why try? A personal note to Rock Hudson. Thank you for calling the restaurant and asking for sherry. I heard the story many times growing up. As I watch another magnificent ocean sunset, I'll imagine the two of you, like Tony and Nora, enjoying cocktails and laughs at the beach. Please let her know that I'm sorry. I was an angry kid who couldn't understand her emotional struggles and was helpless to intervene. I understand her today as a magnificent, fragile, and beautiful creative. I know she motivates me to pursue my artistic passions, and she is woven like a golden thread through my work. Until I see you next time, please leave behind a soft footprint in memory of Rock Hudson. Class is dismissed.
And with nothing more that I can add to Sherry, a respectful nod of the head to you from me, one of those who gets to share in one of those artistic passions of Jonathan's. You've been listening to the Razors Inc. podcast with Jonathan Farini. Be sure to check out Jonathan's collection of fiction at jonathanfarini.com. There you'll find everything from drama to romance, something for every reader. And if you check out Jonathan's Notes tab, you'll find a link to his latest short story, Architecture, recently published by Literary Heist magazine. That's jonathanfarini.com, Farini with 2 R's, 1 N. Or drop an email to razorsincpodcast@gmail.com.